There's a story here you've probably never heard. It's not about the mountaintop speech everyone knows. It's about the quiet final hours of Martin Luther King Jr., the night before his dream changed the world. We all know these four words. They're iconic. They define a man, a movement, a nation's hope. This is the voice of the legend, the powerful orator who could move millions with his words. But we're going to step away from that public stage. We're going to step into the private moments, into the deep silence that came right before the thunder. So our story really begins here, with this stark contrast between the man the entire world saw and the man who was all alone in a quiet room. I want you to just picture it for a second. The wind outside sounds almost like a warning. A single lamp is throwing these long, dancing shadows on the walls. The air in there is just heavy. You can feel it. This isn't a place of peace. It's a place of incredible weight. In that room, in that moment, he was almost defined by what he wasn't doing. He wasn't standing in front of thousands. He wasn't delivering a world-changing speech. He was just a man carrying a dream that had become almost too heavy to bear alone. And this weight, it wasn't just a metaphor. No, it was made of very real fears and absolutely crushing pressures. You have to understand, the pressure was constant. It was this relentless campaign meant to break him. And it wasn't some far-off danger. It was personal. It was coming in through letters, ringing on the telephone, spoken in quiet, ugly whispers. The message was chillingly simple. It wasn't just a threat against his work. It was a threat against his life. A direct promise of violence aimed right at the heart of everything he was fighting for. So, faced with all of this, surrounded by his closest friends who were, terrified for him, he put on a brave face. He had to. He told them what a leader is supposed to say. Don't worry, I'm not afraid of them. But his friends, they could see past the words. They could see it in his eyes. There was fear there, for sure, but it wasn't the fear everyone assumed it was. It was something deeper, something way more profound. And this is the real conflict of that night. See, on one hand, there was the physical fear of his enemies, of death. But on the other hand, there was this much, much heavier burden, the spiritual fear that his entire life's work, the dream itself, would be left unfinished. This brings us to the real heart of that night, a moment of quiet reflection and really a kind of profound acceptance as the hours just ticked by. The talking eventually stopped. His friends went home, and then he was alone again in that quiet room, with nothing but his own thoughts and the immense weight of what was coming. He was literally at a precipice, just standing there by the window, looking out into the total darkness, finally confronting that deep, deep fear he'd been carrying inside. And in that moment of complete solitude, he quietly spoke a line that would become famous later. But he said it first to himself, in the dark. It was this raw, honest admission of his own mortality. Think about that. There was no audience. No one was there to applaud his bravery. It was just a moment of pure, unfiltered truth between a man and his fate. A moment of incredible, quiet courage. So what's the legacy of that quiet night? Well, it's the story of how that private courage became a public inheritance for all of us. Because the very next day, the threat became a reality. A single shot, and the voice that had inspired an entire nation was silenced. But then, a paradox. His greatest fear, that the dream would be left unfinished, it didn't come true. The end of the man was not the end of the dream. In fact, it was kind of a new beginning. The dream started to unfold in a totally new way. It wasn't the responsibility of one man anymore. It was passed on. It became the shared purpose of millions. It transformed from just a single voice into a powerful, unstoppable movement. And that really brings us right back to the beginning. It's so easy to remember the soaring words of the speech, but it's maybe more important to remember the silence, the doubt, and the weight that came before it, the private struggle that made that public moment possible. Maybe this offers us a whole new way of looking at courage. It's not about being fearless. It's about looking straight into the darkness, knowing the cost, and choosing to move forward anyway. That's the courage he found in that quiet room. His story really shows us that a dream doesn't have to end with the dreamer. It lives on in every person who chooses to carry it forward. Which kind of leaves all of us with a big question to think about. When is a dream truly finished?